everybody. This is Sylvia again. Thank you for joining me in Butterfly Talk. Now, today is an episode where I will be talking mostly to RDEB patients and their parents, of course, especially if they're underage. This is an important episode because I will be talking to Jodie Gillon again from Abeona Therapeutics about EB-101, which is basically the genetically modified skin grafts. And these skin grafts are amazing. They what they do, to take a biopsy and then they grow them in labs with the correct protein in it that RDEB patients do not produce enough of. And they put them in areas, and we talk more about that in the interview. I did the interview earlier this morning. But this is important because they're in phase 3, and they need 10 to 15 more patients to enroll so they can finish the phase 3, so that then can go to the FDA to be approved. The sooner we can get this done, the sooner this can be available for all ages of patients. And so I'm gonna get that interview in a minute. Before I start, as usual, I want to show you my mug and my shirt and stuff, like I always do, because I'm a girly girl. So anyway, the mug of the day is this is my queen mug. You see it. My husband got me this for Mother's Day last year, and I thought it was funny because he hates that I have so many mugs. And I'm like, and then you buy me mugs. He's so cute. I love my husband so much. So anyway, this is a very special mug because it's all kind of gold plated, so you can't put it in a dishwasher. We have to wash it by hand, so it's kind of like a pain. But anyway, so that's the mug of the day. And there's no more coffee in it because it's too late now for coffee. It's almost noon. And then the shirt of the day is my I Hate EB shirt. Epidermolysis Bullosa. It's kind of like an infamous shirt because I bought that when they were doing a fundraiser for a kid with EB. This was many years ago, and that there were a lot of people complaining about it. Oh, well, you can't love EB. Can you? I love EB. No, there's no such thing of loving EB. Especially if you're really severe and a lot of pain all the time. You can't love it, you know. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, these are my butterfly earrings. I have a lot of butterfly earrings. So from now on, I'm going to wear my butterfly earrings in every episode and show you. These are special ones that my sister sent me for Christmas, this past Christmas. My sister is always sending me butterfly earrings, bracelets, you name it. She sends it to me. She finds it and she sends it to me. So she's amazing, my sister Katya. But anyway, for those that don't know me, before I go to the interview with Jodie, my name is Sylvia. My son, Nikki, has recessive dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa, and he is 24 years old. So before further ado, let's go to the video. Hi, Jodie. How are you this morning?
I am doing well. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yes. Well, I'm excited because we saw the webinar. I saw the webinar. I hope everybody did. If they didn't, I'll put a link just below the video so you can see that first or after, I suppose. And in the webinar, we were able to hear from Lara and Paul and their amazing experiences with the EB-101, which are genetically modified skin grafts for RDEB patients. And we got to hear also from you, Jodie, and from Dr. Tang. We love Dr. Tang. And this is my little summary. And then I want to see if you can chime in if you want to chime in with the summary. And then I have some questions for you to round up the need for more patients so we can finish the study and get this available, get the FDA approval, and get this available for every RDEB patients out there. So, all right, so definitely hope is here. The skin grafts work. Lara and Paul were very enthusiastic about it, so I was really happy for them. And when they asked why they were doing it, they said they were doing it for future generations, so that
especially for the little kids that don't have to grow up with these wounds everywhere, get these wounds permanently healed with the collagen that they lack. And so as far as the trial goes, they were really happy with the way they were treated by the Stanford team, how they went at their own pace. They were able to relax, if they needed more time or whatever they needed, it was there for them. They were very accommodating. And the great thing, they said, when you go to Stanford, they know about EB, because you go to any other hospital, nobody knows anything. Stanford knows. And that's what they were really happy about. And when they do the skin grafts, when they do the surgery, there's 7 days, post-op days in the hospital. And that's to make sure they just stick, basically, right?
It's follow-up, correct?
And let me see, Abeona helps by providing transportation from anywhere in the United States, and also hotel and meal expenses during the trip. So that helps a lot. And when they were asked if they would do more skin grafts, they said absolutely, 100%. When we can go again? So that was awesome. And now they said the big reason why anyone should do this was because wounds, and this, I found this with Nikki as well. For those that don't know me, my son Nikki is 24 years old and he has recessive dystrophic as well. With RDEB, there's a big chance of skin cancer in wounds. Skin cancer only appears in wounds. And so I was told by many doctors that know everything about EB. Skin cancer plus infections, that's a big one for EB infections. They can get into the bloodstream. It can be really nasty. And so if we close these wounds, or we keep these wounds to a minimum, then there's no risk for infections, no risk for skin cancer. So that's huge. That's huge. As far as if you have any questions for them, for Paul or Laura, to contact them directly, and I will get approval to put their contact information on the video as well, so they can go ask. And when they were asked how long the skin grafts have lasted, they said so far they're still lasting, and it's been 5 to 6 years, which is amazing. They said they've seen no difference in how strong the skin is over there where they put the thing, which is amazing, which it wasn't like that. They didn't realize it was going to last this long, correct?
Yeah, so they entered, that was a really nice summary of a 1-hour webinar. Thank you for that. I still would encourage everyone to watch, because I personally cannot do justice to Paul and Laura's words, and no one can even try and attempt to mimic Dr. Tang. She is unique and phenomenal. So I really encourage everyone who's listening to take an hour and watch the whole webinar. So Paul and Laura entered a phase 1/2 study. So that was the first phase in humans of the study. So there were a lot more questions than answers, as is common in early phase research. So incredibly brave of them, of you, Sylvia, with your son, Nikki. It's very brave. And as they say in the webinar, they had no idea if they personally would benefit themselves. They just wanted to commit to progress, so future generations would benefit. I think what's really nice at this stage is, one, there's so many companies in the space now, which is great. These patients deserve as many options as possible. We want them all to succeed. The other thing that's nice is, as you mentioned, we already have data 5 years out. So Paul, can talk about his experience. He is already healed for 5 years. So we have, safety data of adverse events for 5 years now, 5 years plus actually. And then we also have, how well it works for that many years. So the study that we have ongoing now is phase 3. It's the last phase prior to approval. We know more than we did before. So this is the final stage to get through the finish line.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And they also said one last thing I put on my notes here. It says that the great thing about going to Stanford's always been a mecca for EB research. And so once you're there, if there's any other trial coming up, they have you in the books. They know if you would qualify or not. And so, because they're enrolling patients for other trials as well. And so since they already have you in the books, they can see if you qualify and give you a call. Hey, there's this other trial going on, you want to be part of it, and so that's a great thing. I mean, Nikki was part of the of the EB-101, and then we went on to do the cream, which we loved the cream, and they weren't able to get it going, but anyway, we love that they always thought of us, so it's awesome.
So I think it is nice. Stanford is managing multiple clinical trials, many in the EB space. So somebody like Dr. Tang and her study staff, and I'll share resources at the end, are amazing resources to talk through several options. And obviously there are a handful of EB clinics across the US with exceptional dedicated physicians that are managing multiple trials. So it is great, to explore all these options. I think what's really nice now too is, given the multiple options, we're seeing more flexible protocols. So protocol is like the Bible of the study.
Right.
These are the patients that are going to be in versus out. This is what we're looking at. And at least for ours, and I think it's fairly common, it's not that if you were part of another study, you can't be part of ours. It's just we ask for what's called a 3-month washout period. So washout is like, okay, you could have done something else, but then for 3 months, do nothing, and then you can enter our study. And I think that's fairly common now, especially in EB. So there are multiple options for patients.
Makes sense, because we don't want one study to affect the other one, and so that completely makes sense. Now I have a few questions for you. My first one is, how many grafts can one patient get during the trial, and how big are they?
So you could get up to 6 applied during the trial, and they are the size of a playing card. So I realize I have one set of playing cards. That's my son when he was a baby on the playing card. He'd be mortified if he ever saw this, so I can't share the link. But this is the actual size. So it's 240 centimeters squared, or 6 playing cards.
Yeah. And it's six of them, right? Okay. What kind of area can they graft? No joints, correct? Only flat areas such as the back, forearms, etc.
So in theory, any area. That's
Okay.
in theory. However, for optimal wound healing, you want a surface that you can be flat for healing. So it's not ideal to have a joint, because then for a few weeks, you're going to have to keep that flat. So it's not that you can't, it's just not preferable for healing. What we do is ask the patients, there are some criteria that the wounds have to be large and not healing on their own. So large chronic wounds, but really that's the hallmark of RDEB. So that's not a challenging inclusion criteria. And then Dr. Tang and her study staff will review with the patients where their most troublesome wounds are, which have been open the longest, pain. So Laura, for instance, her whole entire back was an open wound for many years before the study. And then Paul, it was his hands and his feet that gave him the most trouble. He actually struggled to walk because of the open wounds on his feet. So by choosing his feet, it gave him back the ability to walk and be mobile.
That's amazing. Now, I'm assuming that after, when the trial's over and it is approved and it can be available to anyone, they can do joints, if that's an area of need.
So we haven't tested joints yet. I think the complication, again, in theory, it's not a no, but is that patient going to be able to not, let's say, bend to allow the grafts to heal? So I think for clinical trial purposes, where you're seeking approval, you want to make sure it's healing, later, or maybe if there's a retreatment study where a patient comes back and after they're treated, they're able to treat, somewhere else. Hopefully that will be an option in the future as well. It seems like, it's desired, at least by Laura and Paul. Then maybe in the future, joints will be tested. But again, it's going to be hard for a patient to keep, let's say, their arm straight for healing for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it would almost need to be sort of, those boots, for example, for when you break your leg, you put your boot or some kind of brace of some sort, some removable brace, so you can change the dressing, of course.
So you don't forget, or in your sleep you bend.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know my son, my youngest son, had broken his something on his foot, and so he had to wear a boot for I forgot how long, so something like that, right? So they wouldn't bend it during sleep.
Yeah. So I think for now, we haven't tested joints yet, but
it would to be tested before we can put it out available to everybody.
Well, we just need to know the product works, and then it's really a question. It's going to be an individual question, and really up to the clinicians of, do we think that we can immobilize long enough for healing, and exploring the risk benefit of, potentially losing that graft or not having optimal healing from the graft.
Healing itself takes about a month, I would say.
Well, you're constantly healing. So if you look at the photos, in the webinar, you can look at photos even a few days out, versus even, you're looking at like 3, 6, 9 months out, and we're still taking photos, years out. So you can see the healing over time.
I mean, I remember when Nikki got his grafts, I want to say this was in late January. He got in 2015. By a month out, it was all completely healed. I mean, you couldn't even tell the difference between where the graft was and his own skin began. That's how well it healed.
You definitely start noticing a few weeks out.
Yeah, it's great. All right. Question number 3. How long did the grafts last as per the clinical research? How long did you think they were going to last?
So I think originally, and I wasn't part of the company at that time. I joined, it was June 2019. But if I can recall, I think the hope was even, let's hope this lasts 1 to 2 years. But now we have data, 5, 6 years later, and they're still healed. I mean, Paul was the testament to that himself. Both his hands and his feet are still fully healed. So, it's exceeded expectations in terms of healing. And looking at the healing now in someone such as Paul, we don't see that, reversing itself. So, we're hoping that this is just going to continue to stay healed, and at least that area has been tended to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's how long as so far what is the longest so far that the graft has lasted? And it's about the 6 years, 5, 6 years. Okay.
Yes.
Now, one question that Paul had, was it possible to minimize blood work and biopsies? Because that was the hardest thing for him about the trials.
So we have done that, actually. Again, this is the beauty of being part of a phase 3 instead of a phase 1-2 study. In phase, 1-2, you're testing a lot. Dr. Tang and Abeona really took the feedback of the patients to heart. And I think another factor is also COVID. So I'll talk about that too, because we really had to change things up. We cannot eradicate the first biopsy. So we are literally growing cells, healthy cells from the patient cells. So there are going to be 2 8-millimeter biopsies. That's about the size of a pencil eraser. Everything is done to minimize the pain of those biopsies. And Laura and Paul, commented on that as well. We have tried to minimize blood work. There's no blood work twice in a day. I think, that was maybe a different trial. I even have the study visits here. I can hold this up, but I don't know how much you could see, but we're also trying to minimize folks going back to Stanford now, especially during COVID. So after the trial, there's 3 visits that need to be in person. So that's at 6, 12, and 24 weeks. So those are the visits where you are going to have blood work as follow-up. Everything else now we can do, either a home nurse is sent to the patient's home wherever they live, or Dr. Tang. Dermatology has been amazing when it comes to telehealth. And there's a lot that could be done now through technology with Stanford via telehealth.
That's amazing. And I think that's been probably, if you're looking for the silver lining of COVID, that's been, at least for us, is that we were able to do the telehealth instead of having to go, because taking Nikki or any RDE patient going anywhere is always, it's always really hard. Travel.
I think we are trying to do everything we can on an individual basis when it comes to travel. So we have a travel concierge service for patients. Everything is done, especially if, by plane, whatever it needs to be, whether the seats around them are empty, they could travel with a caregiver, whoever they need to accompany them. There's a hotel very close to Stanford with a kitchen. And then they have options too, based on their comfort level. So if they want the same driver the entire time and they don't want to be driving, that could be procured. But if they prefer to rent a car, not to be exposed to someone else, in the car, even if they're wearing a mask, that's also an option. I think what's nice too is Stanford has so many protocols. They have a whole new building where this is taking place. It's phenomenal. So it's very exciting. And I know for Laura, she treated her trips to California as a vacation. So each trip she has 3 children. She brought a different child, showed them Palo Alto. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's, it is.
Stanford is about 20 minutes from San Francisco. And San Francisco is a sight to see. I always felt one of my favorite cities in the world that I've seen. So.
I'm a San Diego girl. Like, that's where I want to retire. I'm from New York, but I always say I want to retire in San Diego on the beach.
It's a different world, isn't it? New York and California isn't a different world almost.
But one with better weather. So.
Oh, yeah, that's true. All right, let me see. Next question. Question 5. How many more RDEB patients do you need for your study to finish phase 3? I saw it on the slideshow 10 to 15. Is that right?
So we will be enrolling 10 to 15. And as Dr. Tang announced on the webinar last Friday, we treated patient 4. Which is great.
So you need a total of how many?
So we would need now, I would say 6 to 11 patients left. Okay. That's how many spots we have left.
Okay, all right.
And we do hope to enroll by the end of this year. That's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, the end of this year, so that means how long does it take for the FDA then to approve it?
So I would say on average 6 months after everything is submitted. It's called a BLA submission. So after the study completes and you've pulled all the data together, you make your submission to the FDA. I would say it takes about 6 months. Sometimes they move faster based on the disease. Sometimes there could be backlogs.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the age group needed for RDEB?
6+, which is great too. And we really hope to see more pediatric patients because we want to make sure that peds are studied as well, not only adults.
Right. Okay, great. Because I know when Nikki started, they had to be 18 for phase 1, right?
They did, yeah. So I think when you're in an earlier study and you're assessing more safety, generally, unless you're seeking that pediatric indication outright, generally it would be 18 and older. But now that there's good safety data from the phase 1-2, we were able to get approval to start at age 6.
Now you have to use different patients. For phase 1 is a set of patients. Phase 2 is a different set of patients, and set 3 is a different set of patients. Correct?
If all phases were distinct, then yes, you would use all different patients unless you have what's called a retreatment protocol, which we haven't embarked on yet. But for us, phase 1-2 was combined.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes the FDA allows flexibility. This happens a lot in rare diseases, oncology, and especially gene therapy, because these aren't the types of products that you would treat on individuals who don't have the disease.
Right.
So in a normal phase 1, if you're looking at like an obesity drug, cardiovascular drug, you might do a small study in healthy volunteers to look at side effects, but these aren't the types of treatments or the types of diseases where you study healthy volunteers.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Makes sense. Now, are there any RDEB patients who would not qualify for the trial?
Yeah, so we do have a few exclusion criteria, but they're very minimal. So the first I mentioned, if you were in another study less than 3 months ago, you just have to wait 3 months. So wouldn't that be that you're disqualified? You just have to wait. Any active infection at the time. So again, these are all temporary. They do need the large chronic wounds. And they do need a confirmed diagnosis of RDEB, but the site can also help with that. I know a lot of patients are dystrophic. They're not sure if they're recessive dystrophic, but certainly Stanford can help facilitate, testing that's needed. And then any history of squamous cell carcinoma at the site that they want to be treated. So those are the main exclusionary criteria.
Okay. And now they learned from Nikki that those that don't make collagen might be at all,
So there are things that we learned in the phase 1-2 that, now we have more data, and now, like you said, there could be creams that can be applied now to, minimize reactions. So you do learn a lot. That's why I say, you and Nikki and Laura and Paul, I mean, that was incredibly brave to sign up for an early phase study, because there were a lot more question marks than answers. We're still studying, there are still questions, but we do have more information now than we did years ago.
I want people to know that, up to the point of Nikki was 18, we had never gotten a diagnosis per se. I mean, we were told there was recessive dystrophic, but they had never done the analysis. And so they sent out, because we were part of the study, they sent it out for us. They did I don't remember if it was a biopsy, it probably was. And so that's where we got the diagnosis of Nikki has one mutation and one deletion, so the recessive gene and the other recessive gene, so that's a really unique thing. So, but anyway, okay. Now this study is at Stanford only, correct? Right now?
Correct.
And then I'll put in the links who we contact, of course, you, and I'll put, like I did before, the contacts to Abeona, contacts to Stanford, and anything that we did before, I'll put that there. And let's make sure to say we are here to recruit people, right? Come on, you can do it.
Yeah, I think Brett and Dr. Tang had a powerful message on the webinar. Dr. Tang, from a clinical perspective, where, she wants to make sure the field is advancing. And I think it's clear, there's no cure yet, but treatment is on a path to cure. We need the treatments to be successful. And I think Brett put it from a more business perspective, that there is interest in EB now. Companies are looking at EB, but if, the phase 3 companies are struggling to enroll and don't make it through the finish line, it's going to be a less attractive field. So whatever trial patients enter, it doesn't have to be ours, it could be others. I just would urge everyone to consider it. Consider if it's right for them, and consider a trial. And let's keep all working together to keep advancing the field.
And it's important. And it's like, I think it was Brett that said, or Joe, now I can't remember who said that, we don't have a cure for cold. We just have to take the medicine for it. And it's the same for me. I have a thyroid problem. There's no cure for that. I just have to take a pill. So, I mean, this is on that path. I mean, this is not a cure, but it's a treatment. And I think closing nasty wounds that they won't heal, it is huge for an EB patient. And we need to make sure this is available this becomes available for anybody that needs it. And once the FDA approves it, I mean, is there studies around the world with this, as Abeona is around the world, or just United States right now?
For us now, it's just the United States. I know some other companies like Amrit Pharma are soon, they're seeking approval in Europe. But for us right now, it's the US only. The reason being, Stanford's our only site, and actually we make our own gene therapy in Cleveland. Those grafts are hand transported by plane to Stanford. So the distance can only be so many hours between Cleveland to Stanford, because we literally make sure it arrives in time for the surgery,
Right.
usually the morning of. So yeah, so that's why the US for now. I know there's a lot of interest ex-US. Right now, somebody who maybe has US health insurance could be treated
Oh,
at Stanford. Yeah.
oh, I see. I see. So if a foreign person wanted to be part of the study, can they?
Well, right now, and who knows in the future, we keep
Yeah.
trying and exploring options, but right now, Stanford needs a patient to have US health insurance. So it really depends on the policy of the
Right.
particular hospital.
Well, and again, as soon as we get this trial over, these people recruited to, I mean, and this is amazing. I mean, to get wounds healed permanently for many years, that's something anybody and everybody we should be able to want. As soon as this is done, then the rest of the world can follow, so.
I think what's really nice too is there were so many unintended outcomes from the wound healing, and you could see that in patient-reported outcomes. So it was only 7 patients, but if you listen to Laura's story about how the healing stopped the infection, and the infection stopping, she wasn't constantly fighting, and she had energy to go back to work, take care of her kids. I mean, that's important. So, and that was unanticipated, but important.
That's amazing. And Nikki would do it again in a heartbeat. And he told me this many times if it would really, really work well. So, but we're waiting. And what Paul said about the biopsies, it sucks. I mean, it does. But the first one, you gotta have it, because they grow the skin from it. And so, yeah, I mean, I really hope this help somebody, give you more information about the study. I'm going to put all the links necessary under this video. I really encourage everybody to at least look into it and see if you can come and visit beautiful San Francisco, right?
Well, I can't thank you enough for making sure this is visible and an option for patients, and being the voice to get the message across. So very grateful, and I really want to thank you for your support, and always the community, because it really does take an entire village to get a drug through the finish line. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being with me today, and thank you for everything you do as well. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. My
Okay.
pleasure. All right. Take care. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview. It was amazing. It was great. I hope you got a lot of interest for it. I'm going to put all the links associated with this on the bottom of the video. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please click on the bell for more videos like this. And thank you for watching. Until next time.